a pretty maiden fair, pretty little maiden with light blue eyes and golden hair. If anyone should ask you, just tell them why I'm going there. Don't you know, she loves me. Hi-ho, she's the girl for me. Dum-dee-di-dee, she loves me. She has a mama who loves me not, I'm sorry to say. She has a papa who hates me more and more each day. They set the bulldog on me every time I go that way. Don't you know, she loves me.
Let's start with the dictionary definition of mores, which is the essential or characteristic customs and conventions of a community. I had planned to open this video with a short video of my grandpa and his siblings singing. I've been having a lot of trouble with attaching images or videos with other videos. Side note, don't buy Adobe Premiere Pro because it is not good at all. It'll crash. Hopefully I'll be able to get it set up, but if not, if you want to see the video, I'll link it in the GroupMe if you care to see it. So apologies for that, but if I'm not able to get it, I'll link it somewhere if you're interested. But I would still like to describe to you at least what the video is about. The video is, like I said, my grandpa and his siblings singing a song. My sister and I were not exactly sure what the song is. We spent like a good time just trying to find it online and we just can't find it. We think that it was a song created by their father because apparently back in the day that's what he used to do. But you might ask, what does, a group of middle-aged people, because they're middle-aged in the video, what does that have to do with mores? What does singing have to do with values in religion? Well, if you knew my grandpa, you would know singing was very, very important to him. I'm not even exaggerating when I say he loves singing. He loved to sing. He's not with us anymore, but he loved to sing. Anywhere he went, he belted out a song. And he's remembered today by family and friends and probably strangers as the guy who loved to sing. But his values of singing, they passed down from generation to generation. So even with his grandpa, or my great grandpa, his dad. So his dad loved singing, he loved singing, his children love singing, and even today, me and my sister and I, we still belt out a ballad. Not as extravagant as he did when he was alive, but we still, sing a tune in the shower, or sing while cooking some breakfast or whatever. So his values turned into my values. When I think of mores or values in a religion, I think of the values that my family and I share. We come from a long line of Catholics, but I wouldn't put God or Yahweh as our main focus. I guess that's why we identify as former Catholics and not practicing Catholics. I do still have family members who are very religious, but I'm not close with them, and I wouldn't consider them my immediate family. Like my grandfather in the video I described, he was a devout server of Yahweh, until the very end. But I unfortunately didn't really get to see all of that. I only probably met him like a few times before he passed. I only got to see bits and pieces of who he was, and I just know he loved to sing, from stories from others, and and I got to see it firsthand when I knew him. I think if I had a closer relationship with my dad's side of the family, I would hold more value in the Christian faith and to religion as a whole, because their values seem to focus a lot more on Yahweh and his teachings, and compared to my mother's family, who, still had a focus on Yahweh and teachings, but it was kind of watered down a bit, and there was more value in family and togetherness than God. And the best example I can give is when I was little and my siblings and I, when we fight, my dad, he would make us do a rosary in the car. I just remember vividly he had it on his rear view mirror. I remember vividly he would, yank it down, and we'd all pass it around and do our Hail Marys while driving back to our mom's house or driving somewhere else. And I remember one time he went on a rant about how we should obey God. And this happened in a car too. And he pointed at a homeless man and he said, "That is God." And basically what he was trying to tell us was, you guys shouldn't fight because Yahweh's message is to be kind to everyone regardless of who they are. But it was just a really extreme thing to see when you're a child, especially to young children who are slowly drifting out of the Christian faith. And my mom's solution to us fighting would just be to put, us in timeout or something. She would get annoyed, like every mother would, and get tired and probably yell at us. But it was very different. It never turned into a lecture about Yahweh and about his teachings. It was all like, "Oh, come on, act mature." And since we were raised mostly by our mom, our values inside of religion became less about God, less about Yahweh, and more about us and the close bond we shared. And we still do Christian holidays, my mom's side of the family. We still do Christmas, Easter, but we don't really do it these days because, we're celebrating the birth of Christ. At least I don't. And I don't think my family does. I think it's more out of habit first of all, but really it's more because we love each other and we want to see each other. And an update on the sibling fighting, we don't fight anymore, but not because, we understand the love thy neighbor thing. We're supposed to know about the teachings of Yahweh. We don't do that. We just don't fight because we know adults just don't behave like that. So, I would like to get to the interview portion of the video. I asked on Facebook. This was just kind of just a bunch of questions that I asked my Facebook friends. I asked, for those who practice a religion, what are the values in your religion that you hold dearly? And this woman, who was the mom of a childhood friend of mine, I still kept in touch with her because she's a lovely person. She replied with, "Love God, love others, This is the great commandment. Those were her words. I also got to speak with this girl who I don't really know. She was one of those campus recruiter types that somehow managed to talk me into giving her my phone number. I kind of forgot about her until she texted me out of the blue, giving me Bible verses that helped her get through this hard time. And I thought that was sweet. I was like, oh, thanks, dude. But then she tried to recruit me into her Bible study, and I asked her some questions, and it was a very similar question, but this is what she told me. I value the personal relationship I have with God and the understanding that my life and doctrine must match in order to save myself and the people around me. Additionally, without the personal relationship with God, there's no meaning for anything. It's like having a boyfriend and me only talking and he never speaks. Or it's a bunch of different people speaking for him without actually hearing what he's thinking. I think in most religions, in the Christian faith especially, that's the main point. God's values are our own values. We live to serve Him. Side note, God, any God you're talking about probably is genderless. Sorry about that. But, I saw these answers from, Christian faith believers and Christian followers. But what about the people outside of the church, I wondered. What do they think? Well, I asked my mom. She no longer identifies as Catholic, but she still has her own personal relationship with religion and with Yahweh. I asked her what she valued most about her own personal journey, and she said she valued the ability to think freely and question everything she'd been taught. Our society has these rules we unknowingly follow without much question, and I think religion is no exception of that. We're told things like God is a man. Okay. Jesus. Okay. God is a man. Ariana Grande will tell you differently. Jesus was pure, therefore he was white. Orthodox Jews can't be black. There's no place for queers in religion. All these things that make religion exclusive. And in this imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist, heteronormative, ableist, theistic patriarchy, we don't really have the space to question these ideas. Like, why do we think God, or Yahweh, is a man? And why is Jesus, who was born in Jerusalem, depicted as white in our society? Why do we see white as pure and black as impure? Why must a person fit a list of stereotypes in order for us to believe they are part of a certain religion? All these questions that we should be questioning, but we don't really, because we just kind of go with it. Rudy Francisco, in his poem "Your God," this was a video we watched, gives us all the stereotypes about God and how he's typically perceived in white America. I bet God's high school served racism in the cafeteria and offered hate speech as a second language, he says in one of his poem verses. I think this is a good example of why so many people are put off by religion, and specifically the Christian faith, because there are many followers who hide behind their God to justify their own bigotry. And, if God's values are our own values and you're a racist, does that mean God is racist too? You know, that's a pretty good question to have. Why would a person of color or a queer person want to be part of a group or a community that openly discredits their identity? You might argue that Christians, like those types of Christians, aren't true Christians. They only represent a small part of what the Christian society is really like. But if you were to ask if they were a true Christian, a true follower of Yahweh, they would wholeheartedly tell you that they were indeed a true follower of Yahweh. And that's really where it gets difficult. You might not see them as part of the group, but they are. And I remember hearing an analogy about racism, and it went something like, poisonous water might come out of the faucet sometimes, and there's only a 1 in 1,000 chance that you'll actually get poisoned when you get water out of the faucet. But the fact still remains that there's still poison in the water and you might get poisoned. So the problem isn't going to be solved until the water is completely clear of all of the poison. Olivia Pierce brings up the term white man's religion, and she discusses her religion, which is Christianity, and she claims religion has no race, and she blames the lack of representation in her religion as the reason why people perceive Christianity as a white man's religion. It's easy enough to say religion has no race, but it's I would say it's harder to show religion as raceless when we have, Nicolas Cage looking Jesuses, dark-skinned Muslims, even Korean Jesuses. And I might be pronouncing this name wrong. I apologize in advance. There are a couple of names that I looked up how to pronounce, but still, I don't know. So, Nishtana in the HuffPost video we watched, it's called "This Jewish Man is Fighting Racism Within the Orthodox Community." He mentions the double standard of religion. People, preach about, religion sees no color, and then they turn around and ask people like Nishtana, I'm sorry, they ask people like him, who is a black man, oh, how are you Jewish if you look like that? And again, sorry, I'm gonna butcher this name too. Saba Chudri talks about his identity as a proud transgender queer Muslim. In the beginning of the video, he says we shouldn't have to lose one identity in order to obtain another one. He shouldn't have to stop being Muslim just because he's queer. He shouldn't have to stop being transgender just because he's Muslim. His intersectional parts are what make him who he is, and he shouldn't be one thing over the other in order to validate his own existence. If religion were more inclusive and accepting to other groups, a lot more people would join them. If God, whatever God, had more values that related more to POCs and queer people, there would be a lot more people joining the religion. And I guess this kind of goes more into Christianity, since it's perceived more as the white man's religion. So if they included more POCs and queer people representation, then there'd be a lot more people in the religion. So in other words, a God that represents all people and all of their values, not just a select group's values, means a religion where everyone is included. I interviewed my maternal grandma. She told me a story about how in the 2nd grade, her neighbor and her mother's best friend, who was Lutheran, she got killed in a car accident. They were Catholic. My grandma and her family were Catholic. She went to a Catholic school with nuns, and she told one of the nuns at her school that about the accident and how her parents were going to the funeral, and the nun told my grandma that she had to prevent her parents from attending a non-Catholic church, or else they would be going to hell. And this shocked my grandma, and she begged her mom not to go to the church for obvious reasons, because she didn't want her mom to go to hell. She didn't want her parents to go to hell. And this is what her mom told her. I know what sister told you is what she believes the church teaches, but sometimes it's not that simple. Vicky was my good friend, and we're going to her funeral to pray for her soul and to comfort her husband and family. And I believe that God understands, and you don't need to worry about our souls. God is bigger than the Catholic Church. My grandma no longer identifies as Catholic, and I asked if it was because her values changed. She said no, in fact, it was her values that drove her away from Catholicism. She says and this is a quote, her break with Catholicism came gradually as she experienced those traits being diminished in her local parish and diocese. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Well, there was an increase in not only tolerance of, but encouragement of prejudice and hate groups. My values in religion are not God-centered. When I look at Christianity, the first thing to come to mind for me isn't Yahweh or Jesus. I think of Christmas time. I think of making a meatloaf Santa out of ketchup and mashed potatoes with my grandma. I think of all the gag gifts given and received, and the laughs we shared by the fireplace on the TV. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, there's a fireplace channel. I think it's on Netflix that you can just turn on the TV and you'll have your own personal fireplace. We don't have a fireplace. I think of family and togetherness. I still have a special relationship with Catholicism, even though I no longer practice the religion and I no longer share the same values as it. And the reason for this is because most, if not all, of my ancestors were in fact Catholic. And they valued that part of themselves, so it's like, obviously I should also have some type of value to it, give some type of value to it. And the truth is, without Catholicism, I probably wouldn't exist. I value who my ancestors were. They were farmers, immigrants, workers. They were part of the lower class, and I value their identity, and I value their existence. So I think religion is a little more than just worshiping a higher power. We studied cults this semester, and one of the things that draws people into cults is that sense of belonging and that sense of togetherness. I was Catholic only because my parents were, and my parents were Catholic only because their parents were, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on, basically. But I never minded being Catholic when I was little. Catholicism was where my family was. I knew and I loved them, and I trusted that they knew what was right for me. I think it was my great grandmother's sister. She fell in love with a Jewish man, and she wanted to marry him, but her father, who was my great great grandfather, he wouldn't allow it because obviously they were Catholic and he was Jewish. And but back then, uh, because the man was Jewish and they were Catholic. And side note, he also disowned my great grandmother for a while because she married a non-Catholic. But we'll get back to that. So back to my great grandmother's sister. She could have run away with the man. She could have married him anyway outside of her father's wishes, but instead she didn't, because she valued her relationship with her father and with her family not to do that. She didn't want to separate from them. She didn't want to lose that part of herself. And I guess my great grandma didn't mind so much. The good news is that she did fall back in with them, and my grandpa eventually got baptized and he became Catholic. And, the cycle continued. So this brings us back to the question, what does it mean to value something in religion? And I honestly think it really just depends on who you ask. Some value the worship of God over everything else, and some value, like me, the community and the people belonging to that community. So it really just depends on who you ask. That's about all I wanted to cover. I hope you enjoyed this little video. Thank you for listening, and have a great rest of the semester.